So you were there at the university in Canada.
Right.
And you were going to talk to these students.
It was an off-campus site that we'd rented out last second because we weren't allowed to actually come to the university. We were met with roughly 40 protesters. Two of them lunged at me, one of them holding a drill bit. He breached the perimeter, broke through the door, knocked me in the face. There was no police in sight, so I went to the camera and I said, these people trespassed, vandalized, and broke through our perimeter. Now I'm going to remove them. And I did that.
Hi, I'm Daniel Seaman. Thank you for joining me again here on Straight Up. I often talk about the Eighth Front, that front that is not the one that Israel is facing on the ground here with Gaza, Lebanon, the Judean Samaria, Syria, Iraq, the Houthis, Iran. The Eighth Front, as I've always mentioned, is that front of the cognitive warfare, or what we call Hasbara at times. But it's that place where we're facing the international pressures on Israel. Mostly you can see it on the media, social media, etc. But there's also this aspect of it, which is boots on the ground. It happens on the ground, and it's usually in your areas. Canada, the United States, Europe, Australia, South Africa, all these places where Jewish communities are facing the onslaught of the same terrorist elements that are fighting us in the field here. They're fighting you there in your countries. Who are the boots on the ground in your situation? It's your own kids. Your kids who are going to college, your kids who are going to universities, your kids who are facing the children and sometimes the elders, which are their professors, doctors, etc., in the universities, who are all joining hands with the terrorist elements, the jihadist elements, who are trying to disrupt your lives abroad because of you being Jewish, not even Israel supporters. It's enough that you're Jewish and they're making your lives miserable there. So I wanted to focus on this today, on this aspect, because last week I think many of us had seen this incident in Canada, where a group of pro-Israel Jewish students had a gathering, and once again, pro-Arab, pro-Palestinian, as they call it, pro-resistance showed up to disrupt the event being held by the pro-Israel students, and this time it became physical. The person there, a young man, an Israeli who was there to speak to them, didn't sit around and let them abuse the Jewish students, but he kicked them out of there. This was a private event that was not open to the public. They invaded the area. They were abusive. They were the ones who came to disrupt the event itself, and they used physical violence. Sounds very familiar to what we're facing here. And once again, the Jews, the finger is pointed at the Jews and to the Israeli who took it upon himself to make sure that the other Jewish students were not threatened by these people. So my guest today is the person who was a guest there in Canada and was invited by the Jewish students, Jonathan Carton, who is an Israeli, and he's here today joining us on Straight Up. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me, Daniel. I appreciate it.
No, it's our pleasure. So let's just get a little background on yourself. Obviously, you're speaking. It's clear that you're not the average Israeli. You don't have an Israeli accent. So where are you from? What brings you to Israel?
Actually, I was born and raised in the United States. And if you go back far enough, my family and your family, everyone's family is from here, from this
Right.
land. We're indigenous to this land. I came to Israel when I was 19 years old. My uncle, unfortunately, was kidnapped and murdered by Hamas, by the Izaldin al-Qassam Brigade. His name was Sharon Ede, Zichron Livracha.
Here in Israel.
Here in Israel. And he was taken from us too young. We searched for him for 7 months. Ultimately, the terrorists tortured him to death, burying him in 2 places. So I grew up with his story and would come back to Israel every summer for a zikaron. We do a bike-a-thon in his memory. We had a synagogue that we had in his memory, a Torah as well. And so I kind of learned about Israel through the memorialization of my uncle and through our connection to Yad Vashem. My grandparents were on the board of the American Society for Yad Vashem, as well as my father. And they were survivors, both of my grandparents. So I knew all about the country. And when I was 18, I wanted to see if I would bode well in a meritocracy as opposed to having accomplished everything for my parents and their backgrounds. So I came to Israel, and I originally got injured and moved into intelligence, a unit called Ofet.
Oh, you came
as a lone soldier.
As a lone soldier,
Lone soldier.
like quite a few American young men and women from the United States
Right.
who do that. Kol hakavod. And you joined and you were injured in
I
your
was
service.
injured in my service, moved into intelligence for a number of years before finishing my service and going back to the States. There I studied at Columbia University, where I had my own war, the Eighth Front, as you so eloquently put it. In fact, my professor, Joseph Mossad, endorsed the Zeldin al-Qassam Brigade, which is the same military brigade of Tzurif, Khuliyat Tzurif, that kidnapped and tortured my uncle to death. So I put together a class action lawsuit, an OCR complaint, and we sued Columbia University. It was the first test of Trump's Title VII. I think the term is, if I'm not mistaken, he had a executive order. So it was a test of his executive order, the first time it was tested in courts. And then after I finished my studies at Columbia, I started helping Israeli startups come to the American market. I had a little consulting practice, and that pivoted into venture capital, ultimately culminating in the Iftach Group, which was a organization that helped Israeli startups come to the American market and invested in them as well. We had a fairly successful two rounds, and eventually the war in 2023 brought me back to Israel. I'd sold the GP portion of my fund, moved back, came back to my unit. I was in Argentina at the time. And
So you're one of those many Israelis who,
yeah.
every country that has a war, everybody's escaping. Israelis tend to come back at that time. So
There
we're one of those.
more flights that landed that month and took off. And it's the only time I know in modern history where during wartime there are more civilians that come back and don't run away. So I flew from Buenos Aires to Paris to Rome, and from Rome to Ayanapa, and I came into the port of Haifa before joining up with my team, and then served subsequently for another year and a half, and I've been back in the reserves back and forth, and I was recently in the 12-day war, and then again in a couple of practices since then. But my full-time job now is at Oz. I'm a principal at the venture capital defense tech dual-use company Oz Ventures.
So what brought you to Canada? You didn't just happen to be there that day. You were invited by the students, the organization is
Students Supporting Israel.
Supporting Israel. And they do a lot of work throughout the United States, working on campuses. They're literally on that front line.
Right.
And they brought you to do what that day?
So they brought me to talk about my uncle, Zichrono Livracha, to talk about my time during the war, to talk about national resilience and some of the critical infrastructure we need economically in order to maintain our hegemony in the region. So I came to speak about those fronts that I work on.
Had you done it before in other universities?
I'd never spoken, at other universities. I love to hear myself speak, but I'm usually busy with my own work before I have time to speak to the public. And I thought for me it was important because I had put my life on the line, and my friends had put their lives on the line in order to differentiate between combatants and civilians. And sometimes they lost their life because they had to differentiate between combatants and civilians. And here we're called genocideers. My grandparents had survived an actual genocide, came and then as refugees to the United States and to Israel, and they maintained their life and rehabilitated. And that term is very, very sensitive for us. So to be called a genocideer when I put my life on the line to differentiate between the two is something I had to go and say, this is not correct. I saw it. It's not the case.
Oh.
And even if they would never believe me, if they say this wall, for example, is purple, and I see that it's brown, I still have to say that it's brown, even if you're blind, because it's just not the case. Even if you'll never believe me, it's just not the case.
Nothing changes. When I first started working on behalf of Israel, I was a student in New York. I had just finished the first Lebanon war, and I had to deal with this. This is back for over 40 years ago now. So not only does it not change, it becomes worse. And the lies are much greater now than they were. Even then they lied about us. But it seems that every generation has to deal with this kind of stuff. So you were there at the university in Canada.
Right.
And you were going to talk to these students. How many students were there? The Jewish students?
We had roughly.
Israel?
Fortunately, we were attacked prior to the beginning of the
event didn't even start.
No, we were still in the achanot. We were still in the preparation stage. And it wasn't at the university. It was an off-campus site that we'd rented out last second because we weren't allowed to actually come to the university. So we had to change location several times.
The same universities that host terrorists supporting jihadists on campus wouldn't let the Jewish organization have an event there.
Right.
Was it because of your presence or just in general?
I think they had turned off several other events prior, but I can't speak to their reasoning. Yeah.
So they had this private event. Students were there, and the usual.
So I've been yelled at before. I've been spit at before. I've been called names before, but I've never seen this form of violence on campuses. I think what had happened, to the best of my knowledge, was the information about where we were going to be was put out on an SJP website, probably Instagram or Facebook, and they collected a lot of storms. We were met with roughly 40 protesters. Several terrorists put themselves within the protesting mob, and as soon as I walked towards the internal door, two of them lunged at me, one of them holding a drill bit. And I had the decision to make whether or not to defend myself there or to try to see where the other students were and barricade the internal door. So I decided that it was best to barricade the internal door as opposed to defending myself there.
Were there no police there?
No police there. And the security that we had hired only came like when the event started, but before
Oh, this was even
before the event started.
started.
The only Jews that were there, the only Israel supporters that were there were people that helped with the preparation of the event.
So they were threatened, and there was violence directed against them, against you?
Yeah, the guy ran at me with a drill bit. I barricaded myself behind a secondary door. He breached the perimeter, broke through the door, knocked me in the face. He ran away with a drill bit, and I heard more people coming up from the staircase. Their voices of yelling, it was once muffled, now is more clear, which means they'd somehow gotten through the main building entrance. So I had to figure out how best to secure the remaining students who were hiding in the internal room. So I decided to first speak to the proprietor of the shop, and I told him, "Hey, are these people your guests? Are they trespassing?" And he said, "No, these are not my guests. But I don't want them here." At which point we asked them to leave several times. They wouldn't leave. This is again as I'm bleeding, as I got knocked in the face.
We can see that there. I've seen the wounds. You can see them on the videos. Even at that point, you're being physically assaulted. You're being cut, and still no police. You don't see them in the videos.
Right. So he had held a drill bit in his hand. I got the tetanus shot because it might have been a cut from the drill bit itself. It might have been a cut from the glass that it was wielding. One of the two. And no, there was no police in sight. In fact, it took them, I'm not sure exactly how long, but anywhere between 30 minutes to an hour to actually get there. And so I basically wanted to make sure that the other students weren't hurt. So I came in to check on them. I saw there were people still yelling at them and screaming, and I had just been attacked by one of their collaborators. So I went to the camera and I said, "These people trespassed, vandalized, and broke through our perimeter. Now I'm going to remove them." And I did that. I removed them and barricaded the door until the police came.
And that's one of the things we see in that video. We usually see in a lot of these events, the Jews restraining themselves. I don't want to say cowering. I don't want to say they're hiding. But it's not when you have a mob that are standing up, and we're not talking now about the Middle Ages. We're not talking about Europe. We're not even talking about World War II. This is Canada. This is post-World War II. This is the modern world. And you have young Jews being assaulted for the simple reason of being Jewish. And you don't hear, there was not a lot said about this on the media in Canada. The media that knows so well to tell us about, as you said before, genocide and do all these, nothing is said about this when Jews are being persecuted in their own homes and in an event there. Now, usually they're holding off. What a lot of Israelis loved in this was that you grab these, I don't want to say the word, but any of you can understand the word that I'm thinking of that can be bleeped if I say it. You grab these and you kicked their butts out of there. You didn't kick, you just threw them out. And it was wonderful to see. And suddenly these great heroes were whining and cowering themselves. And to me, this was the best thing that I'd seen in years. Finally, Jews standing up for themselves. How did the Jewish young people, I don't want to say kids, but for me, they're kids. How did these kids respond when they saw that? Both sides.
Yeah, so I've gotten thousands and thousands of messages. I would never have assumed that it would have gone this viral. Because to me, an idea of a Jew defending himself is commonplace. I live in Israel. And my grandparents were partisans, and my parents were parts of the Israeli military. My family has been in every military and every war since the beginning of the country. So to me, it's natural that Jews to defend themselves. But I think that in the diaspora, the idea that you can give yourself permission to defend yourself, to learn how to defend yourself is relatively novel. So I got thousands of comments and requests to know how one might learn to defend themselves, because the police and the military are great in your local countries, but you also have a responsibility to take care of your own soul. It's in the Torah. Something like that. But you have to essentially protect your own soul first and foremost. So I think they wanted to learn how to defend themselves as well. They wanted to learn what best to do to somehow win back their city. And I told them all the same thing. First and foremost, learn and go to a Krav Maga class. Try to arm yourself if you have to. Get more involved with your local parliament, your local authorities. Go out and vote when you have to go out and vote. Organize. Everyone has a particular skill that they grew up with, that they have this particular chukka to do. Maybe you're an artist, maybe you're a scientist, maybe you're a financier, but each one has their particular ability to help. La'amir, make that ability relative to, or relevant to, the pro-Israel cause. And if you're not planning on defending yourself and fighting to win back your city, then come back home, come back to Israel. And that's what I told each one of them. On the other side, I got a bunch of death threats, creative death threats. Somewhere I think I take my hat off to them. A lot of interesting, fun death threats. But it's nothing new. And I think that the reason it went viral is because for the first time in a while, people understand that it's not a game, that people are dying day in, day out. And although there might be useful idiots on the ground who are easily brainwashed and that think this is some sort of like tic-tac-toe, I come in parade here, you go and yell there, this is real life. And when you attack a group of Jews and you assault them, you need to understand that you'll find out exactly why we've been managed to survive for 5,000 years. We're not a Jew with cowering knees.
That's great. And in the meantime, the authorities in Canada, they apprehended these people?
Apprehended these people. They took the first 5 people they managed to apprehend was on the same day, during the same day.
Okay.
And then about a couple of days later, they ended up finding the guy that's been attacked me as well.
Was it footage, or did, did the cowards give the names? And
I don't know exactly how they found him. That's a great question. I'd love to find out. But apparently he had multiple arrests prior.
He's Canadian by birth, or is he?
I think he's a Canadian citizen. His name is Kabil something or other.
Kabil, okay.
Whatever his name is.
Yeah.
But yeah, they got him, and hopefully now they'll hold him behind bars. I mean, aggravated assault, deadly weapon. It's a serious crime. I'm not sure exactly what the legal parameters are in Canada. I know that they're less stringent than the United States, but hopefully they'll either rehabilitate him or take him away from being a danger to society.
Well, this is, Canada. What they don't get is the Jews are a minority there, and in the United States and in Europe. And I've also referred to this in my previous podcasts, that the only minority in the Middle East who's been able to stand up to the Muslims are the Jews, because every other minority here in this area is persecuted. And what they can't do here, the Muslims are doing in the other countries, in your countries. They're taking advantage of the fact that Jews can't defend themselves there, and suddenly they become heroic together with the useful idiots that are helping them out. And this is nothing, they're very brave when they have the ability, just like on October 7th, when there was nothing to opposing them, they were very brave. And within 48 hours, suddenly they became the victims again. In Canada, when they're with a group together, or in the United States, where they go on these campuses and they feel that they have the local support, they're not trying to promote peace. They're not trying to promote, let's us all live together. They're doing what they do throughout the Middle East and throughout the Muslim world, is put down anybody who opposes Islam.
So I agree with the majority of what you're saying. I would change one thing. I don't think it's the religion of Islam or Muslim people that are going around doing this 24/7. I think that it's a radical form and a radical interpretation of that religion. The issue is when there are 2 billion people who are following that religion, and a radical form takes place, even within a percent of the population, it's still a significant portion of people, especially relative to our numbers, which is 15 million internationally. So I would say that it's not... I had people that are Muslim that served with me in the military. I had people here in Parliament that are Muslim as well. So I wouldn't say it's a radical interpretation of a religion that had not gone through the Enlightenment period like Christianity did. At one point, Christianity also had its crusades as well and enacted very tribalistic and nationalistic. So I would just say that it's not a Muslim issue. It's an issue of Arab nationalism that's permeated. And the Armenians fought back against Arab nationalism. The Cypriots fought against Arab nationalism. The Andalusians in southern Spain fought against Arab nationalism. So I agree with you that it's an ideology that permeates across many cultures and throughout history has been fought to be contained. But I don't think that the Jews are the only ones that are fighting this, or that successfully...
No, we've succeeded now in this era.
Right. So the Armenians also.
But just the point that I want to make on that is that, yes, I agree with you on the points that you made here, but there's one difference between the others and with Islam. Islam, if you accept Islam, There is no accepting anybody who is not Muslim. And they are the enemy and they're to be annihilated. So it doesn't matter what level. You may be a decent human being, a decent Muslim. And I have some Muslim friends, and I have some people that I met through social media who now have migrated, and I'm very happy for them to get out of the places that they've been to. But at the end of the day, the true believers, and that's what we're dealing with. It's not a minority within them. It's the religion itself that pushes for that. And that's part of the problem. The West doesn't understand that.
I think that it's not the true believers of Islam that are killing us. It's the misbelievers, those that misinterpret some of the beautiful things that I have in the religion as well. They have this concept of Durb al-Harb and Durb al-Salam. My mother's Moroccan. I speak Arabic. I've lived in Morocco for several months. The people that misinterpret it believe that they need to now take the entire world and do jihad physically and kill all of the infidels. And unfortunately, that's the fight that we're facing every single day. But those are the individuals that are misinterpreting what can be seen as a beautiful text. There are good parts and there are bad parts. There are also parts in the Quran that says, come, there's a Jew behind me. Come and kill the Jew. The tree and the stone will one day say. And they have practices of taqiyya.
On the day that they'll point the finger and say,
there's practices of taqiyya. But in Judaism, we also have areas where we say we have to, stone adulterers. And we have to, at one point, take a ben so'er u'morer, a child, and take him to the mikdash and kill him off. So every religion has their crazy extremities. Thing is, we don't interpret it that way. We take the parts that are relevant to collective community and enjoy those parts and don't really give as much credence to the crazier parts. The opposite is to be said about that, in my opinion at least, about that culture. So again, I don't have an issue. We have to differentiate between the religion and then the radical practice.
I've let you go on with this, and this was not part of our conversation, was supposed to be the point of it, but I like the fact that in the midst of this, and we're dealing with a very serious situation, you who've not only been involved in that, and you who've lost loved ones, you find it necessary at some point to say something good about them and point out the good about them, and you're focused on that, even in a discussion that, and I wanted, and I decided to leave this in, because I think it shows a lot. It's very reflective of the difference between us and them.
Right.
Now we'll fight the fight, and if we have to, we'll defend ourselves, but we don't remove their humanity.
Of course not. In fact, I'll give you something interesting that maybe I can ask you a question for a change. Familiar with the trolley problem?
What is that?
The trolley problem? Basically, if you're on a trolley, you're on a train, and all of a sudden there are 5 people on the tracks, and you have to decide, do I do nothing and let the 5 people get run over, or do I turn left for the tracks and kill one person? And so when I was in intelligence, they asked me this question, and it doesn't really matter if you decide to do nothing and let 5 people die, or turn left and let one person die. What really matters is the follow-up question that they ask, which is similar to the trolley problem. You're on a bridge, and underneath the bridge, there's also a train, and on the train tracks, there are 5 individuals. And you can do nothing. You can walk across the bridge and let the 5 individuals be run over by the train. Or you see this large man looking over the bridge. You can push the large man. He'll fall to his death, but he'll stop the train from hitting the people. So the question they ask is, what do you do in the second scenario? Do you push the large man to his death? Or do you do nothing? And so what they want to find out here is not whether or not you push a large man or turned right, therefore actively killing one person, or whether you do nothing in both scenarios and passively kill 5 people. They're not questioning whether indecision is a decision. They're questioning whether your value of life is the same. Because a lot of the time people will say, hey, I'll turn left, right, and kill the one person on the train, but I'll never push someone physically, right? Because it's difficult. It's more concrete that way.
Right.
And so when you go into intelligence, they want to make sure that your value of life is the same across any medium, whether it's stabbing, shooting, killing, bombing, a drone, a UAV, IED, whatever method of kill, you don't feel that it's more or less serious in every particular medium. And so I think that's the difference between our side and their side. We only take into consideration individuals that have a sanctity of life, and we praise the value of life and death in that modicum, as opposed to going after civilians and targeting and killing and raping, etc. It's the difference of the Western values versus the value system that we're currently fighting.
Wow, this did take a
Sorry,
No. On the contrary,
sure.
I love this, and I think our viewers will appreciate it as well. It went in a direction that we weren't even thinking about when we first sat down today, but I think it's very indicative of what we are and what we're dealing with. These are very difficult times, they're very difficult questions that we all have to address. So this issue, you finished it there with Canada, and you're back here. You're going on with your life. Are you going to make more appearances? Or are you going to be reluctant now?
No, I'm going to make more appearances. In fact, right after I was hospitalized and stitched up, I went and did another talk afterwards. I'm not going to stop. I'm not scared. I prefer to die on my feet than to live on my knees. It's just not the way we are. So I'm going to continue my work. I work now specifically within national security. I work for Oz Ventures, which is a defense tech dual-use company, and we help Israeli startups, Series A all the way to Series C, involve themselves in dual-use tech. And then we also have a private equity sector that helps build data centers, photonic semiconductors, all of the building blocks for the AI revolution. And we're creating it such that we go from the 48th place in the world, Israel as the 48th largest distribution of semiconductors and photonic chips, to the 8th largest in the world.
Oh, wow.
And so you can't kill us if you need us. That's what I'm working on now. Yeah.
Jonathan, we could have gone on. We had no directions and new things, but it was a wonderful conversation. I thank you, first off, for standing up there and for yourself and for the young pro-Israel Jewish young men and women there in Canada. I hope they all serve as an example. Want to thank those who are watching us, who your children are on campus, who are supporting Israel and standing up for Israel. That front is as important in all the other fronts that we're facing today. And only when we face this together can we be successful. So good luck to you. Thank you for being here. And thank you all for listening to us, and see you next week.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.